Stoicism. You've probably seen it everywhere, right? It's in self-help books, it's the talk of Silicon Valley. It's pitched as this ultimate life hack for being more resilient. But what if this philosophy that everyone's talking about isn't quite as rock solid as it seems? Let's, you and I, take a much closer look.
So today, we're really going to put Stoicism under the microscope. We're going to ask the big question, is this really some timeless guide to living a good life? Or is it a system of thought that's actually, well, kind of full of holes? Things like outdated science, logical mistakes, and even some pretty big contradictions. I mean, it's no wonder Stoicism is so popular today. Let's be honest, in a world this chaotic, the idea of focusing on virtue, self-control, and emotional strength is incredibly appealing. It promises us a way to find peace by just focusing on what we can control. But to really, truly understand it and see its flaws, we've got to go way back to its roots. And that brings us to our first major point. See, Stoicism wasn't just dreamt up in a vacuum. It was built on the scientific knowledge of its day, the ancient Greco-Roman world. And from where we're standing now, those foundations, they look a little shaky.
Just think about it for a second. Guys like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, they didn't have the scientific method, they couldn't run experiments, they didn't have powerful telescopes. So a lot of their ideas about how the universe worked were based on, speculation and reasoning, not on cold hard data.
And right here, the difference is just night and day. The Stoics were convinced we lived in a geocentric universe, that the Earth was the center of everything, and that the cosmos was guided by this divine rational force they called the Logos, basically God's mind ordering everything perfectly. Of course, we now know the sun is at the center, and the universe runs on physical laws. And this isn't just a tiny detail. Their whole ethical system was built on this very idea of a perfectly rational, divinely ordered universe.
And this limited understanding went way beyond just the stars. Their biology, it was based on ideas like pneuma, a sort of spiritual life force, and the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire. Their medicine was totally speculative, and their psychology, while it had some interesting insights, was also really deeply shaped by the cultural biases of their time.
Okay, so the science is out of date. We get that. But what about the logic? The actual arguments. Well, as we're about to see, when you build on a shaky scientific foundation, you can end up with some surprisingly weak arguments, often built on some pretty common logical mistakes.
First up is a big one, the appeal to nature fallacy. This is the idea that if something is natural, it has to be good, and if it's unnatural, it must be bad. It sounds good on the surface, but it doesn't really hold up. And this is exactly where Stoicism gets into trouble. Its main instruction is to live in harmony with nature. For them, this made perfect sense, right? If the universe is divine and rational, then living naturally is the only rational thing to do. The problem is, it often just assumes what natural is, without really proving it. For example, is it natural to suppress your grief? The philosophy says so, but it doesn't really offer the solid logic to back that claim up.
All right, next up, we have the false dichotomy. This is a classic trap where an argument basically tells you that you only have two choices, A or B, and it totally ignores the fact that options C, D, and E are sitting right there. And Stoicism does this quite a bit. It often frames our choices in the face of hardship as being super simple. You can either passively accept your fate, or you can fight against it and fail. But hang on, what about a middle ground? What about working to actually, change things for the better? This kind of black and white thinking just doesn't capture how complex real life actually is.
And believe me, the list goes on. Stoicism can also fall into other logical traps, like appealing to tradition, making generalizations without enough evidence, and just appealing to authority without asking enough questions. The big takeaway here is that the logical foundation of Stoicism, it's just not as solid as you might think. Now we get to what I think is the most fascinating part of all this, the internal tensions. These are the parts where Stoicism seems to completely contradict itself, creating these really mind-bending paradoxes. So, just look at this first one, acceptance versus action. On the one hand, Stoicism is telling us to accept everything we can't control with this calm detachment. But on the other hand, it says we have to actively participate in public life to be a good, virtuous person. So, which is it? Do we just sit back and accept the world as it is, or do we get up and try to change it?
And here's another huge one. The Stoics believed in determinism, the idea that every single thing that happens is already predetermined by that cosmic fate, the Logos. But at the same time, they insisted that we are morally responsible for our own choices.
How can you be responsible for your actions if they were already written in stone before you were even born? It's a massive philosophical puzzle.
And finally, we've got this paradox of indifference. The ideal Stoic sage is supposed to believe that only virtue is truly good. Everything else, health, wealth, your reputation, those are all indifferent. They don't really matter. But then the philosophy kind of backtracks and says that some of these things are preferred. It's better to be healthy than sick. It kind of feels like it's trying to have its cake and eat it too.
So after pointing out all these issues, the outdated science, the logical flaws, the internal paradoxes, what are we supposed to think? Should we just toss Stoicism in the trash bin of history? Absolutely not. The goal here isn't to tear everything down. It's to engage with these ideas more thoughtfully.
This quote just nails it. Our job is to discern the enduring truths from the temporal limitations. We need to be like philosophical archaeologists, carefully brushing away 2,000 years of dust to find the real gems that are hidden underneath.
So here's the bottom line. We can absolutely admire the Stoic focus on resilience while also admitting that their understanding of the cosmos was just plain wrong. We can use an amazing tool like the dichotomy of control, separating what we can influence from what we can't, without having to buy into the whole predetermined universe thing. Appreciation and criticism can, and they absolutely should, go hand in hand.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. How do we borrow ancient wisdom without also inheriting its ancient errors? Now that is the real challenge and the real adventure of engaging with these timeless ideas.